Hey, how you guys doing today?
Doing good, Will.
Well,
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. So I had the pleasure of speaking to Aline Shanahan and Paul Martinez. They Aline is actually the founder and CEO of Warrior Ranch Foundation, and Paul Martinez is an Army veteran. Aline, tell me a little bit about how you got started with this.
Sure, but I also want to give Paul some credit because he was there from the beginning and is also on our advisory board as well. So, got to give him some credit there. But yeah, so this foundation, Warrior Ranch Foundation, it very simply will began out of love of country and love of horses. I have my dad's a Marine. He's guarding the pearly gates now, but as you know, once a Marine, always a Marine. So he I grew up in a family, both my parents taught us always to give back. And so my whole life we've been giving back. I helped my father a lot with the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation. And I got into horses about 20 years ago, fell in love with them. My husband and I rescued our first horse named Warrior, and which is part of the reason for the name of the foundation. But we rescued him and knew we wanted to do something with horses, rescuing horses, and military and helping. And it took a few years to develop it. I thought about this for a long time, and then it all finally came together in 2016. We incorporated it. It's very simply started in our backyard, helping out some other veterans. And we do, in a nutshell, equine assisted services. And we provide a safe haven of health and well being for veterans, first responders, and horses in need. And it works.
I trust me, I've seen enough people go through these type of programs before to know that it works, and the healing properties between humans and horses of being like individuals or things that they can trust. Over here, we have horses horses healing or something like horses hands over here,
Mhm.
and we actually have a couple of them that partner up with the veteran community out here, and they do an amazing job.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Paul, what about yourself?
So I was just kind of being a lone ranger in Long Island when I was looking for a place for a driving program, and I was looking for somebody that was helping veterans with horses because that's where my heart has been since I got out. And a good friend of mine, Robbie Siegelman, introduced me to Eileen. Said he'd been, kind of following her career for a little while, and that made the introduction. And we were fast friends. We kind of realized pretty quickly we were speaking the same language. We have the same direction we wanted to go in our hearts. So it was a pretty easy fit. Lucky for me, reclaiming land and getting ranches set up is kind of my bread and butter. So Warrior Ranch was deeded some land by the state, and we had a big project of turning that from a beagle club where they would go out and
Yeah.
hunt rabbits to something that was going to be useful to equines, and then accessible for veterans, family friendly for their family and friends, and all that stuff. So it was a big bite, but it was really fun to do. It was really fun to work with Eileen. She's got a lot of energy. She's very focused on the mission and the success, and that focus really helps when you've got 1,000 different little projects to make your one
Yeah.
big project come together. So that was kind of my role, and then sort of doing veteran liaison
Mhm.
stuff, and then helping with some of the programming because I've done quite a bit of other veteran programs they're different from Warrior Ranch. So that's kind of how I got involved. And you're from Long Island. Some of the best people I've ever met are there. It's a very community minded place, which surprised me. I thought it'd be like any other place. It's densely urban, but the community really came together. And now I think it's most of my good friends that I talk to pretty regularly. I met through Warrior Ranch. I talked to somebody from Warrior Ranch who's moved on to another state or is still there pretty much every week or every other week. So it's kind of like the unit you serve in where you start and you've got your duty station, and then within a couple of years you're like, I've got friends all over because they that's how the military works. You move on with your life and you go on to the next thing, but you have those bonds that are formed. So that's been really something that I really appreciated and didn't really anticipate getting the benefit of, is having that now nationwide network of people that we shared all that experience on Warrior Ranch.
I
So
just
have
want
you?
to say, if you don't mind, Will, I want to comment on something because Paul had said something about Robbie Siegelman. That's the gentleman that introduced Paul and I. And Robbie now does and has been doing once we got the property out east. When Robbie saw that, because Paul and I were working together prior to that. Uh, but Robbie's been doing a cart program with us ever since. He donates his time. He's been donating his time for veterans for many years at Siegelman Stables, and he's an incredible guy. And that's been one of our programs for the past several years now. So it's been pretty great.
So what's driving the cart?
Sully, the
Yeah.
horse,
Yeah.
is one of our
Yeah. So,
rescue horses. Sully.
yeah. So we've got a racehorse in the front, and then we've got a 2-seater cart. It looks like a chariot, just like from the old movies, but obviously a little bit more modernized. And that program is really cool because, um, there's a lot of different things that Warrior Ranch offers, but I like the driving program because it's a 2-seater. So instead
Hmm.
of one guy with a horse or one guy in an arena where it's just you and the animal, now you've got the animal to think about, but you have that familiar feeling of sitting next to your buddy, just like if you're sitting in a truck or a Humvee or on a bus to go somewhere for whatever you're doing for the military. And I think that's a natural thing, to be in motion in a semi-dangerous conveyance with somebody that you may or may not know really well, but you're kind of like forced to interact in that way. And I think that aspect of the program makes the driving program really good. So I think there's a layer to it that's beyond just the horse. I think the actual physical format of the Warrior Ranch driving program really it works. It's effective.
So interesting fact about standing side by side, or actually for guys, they better communicate side by side than they do face to face, like what we're doing right now.
Oh, that's
And
interesting. I did not know that.
yeah, so there was like this man shed theory that they actually started up. I think it was over in Australia, if I remember correctly. And they realized that guys would be able to communicate better side by side. And they realized that the women were like, hey, how come they're not wanting to engage? If they're working together or they're doing projects together, they're able to have that friction, but it's soft enough. And being off a primitive way, we actually want to fight each other, and especially we start staring at each other in the eyes, and then it actually creates this aggression. But that's pretty interesting about how the cart going side by side of how you were able to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Curiosity before I ask Aline a few more questions. Did you actually go around horses much before you did this program? And did you go through this program yourself?
I did, yeah. Yes to both. So before I moved to New York, I was part of a cow calf operation in Virginia, and we worked mostly from horseback because there's a couple of broke rangers that working cattle. We needed big horse legs to help get us around because we're both injured, and that worked really well for us. And then we started having guys come out on the weekends. We'd see somebody was maybe in a rough patch in their marriage or a rough patch in their career. And like, we'll get them out. We'll do a campfire. Maybe we'll get on the horses, whatever. We found out like the guys were really drawn to the horses. And then after they were done, just being in nature, being around a campfire, and then the time with the horses was really stuck out. And it seemed to kind of smooth out the immediate future for these guys. And that's what clued us in. So that was my first veteran program, was just getting rangers we knew that were, that we viewed as at risk or in jeopardy, and getting them out for some of that pressure relief. And we used the horses. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't know the science behind it. We just knew it worked. We're like, well,
Yeah.
working, and it's a good, healthy thing to do, and it's physical. And then when I linked up with Aline, part of our getting to know each other was basically her doing kind of a one-on-one with me of all the things that were going to go into the program, and whether it's the obstacle course or the natural horsemanship and moving a horse around like that, forming a relationship or joining up with a strange horse, and how important that was, and that some techniques behind that, which really served me well. I mean, I've gone on to work for other people that are equine professionals. And, in one case, I had some very young horses that I was responsible for, exercising, which is pretty scary when, they're 2 and 3 years old and they're not really broken yet. They don't really know what they're doing, and they're still pretty wild. And a lot of the natural horseman stuff, just working from the ground and getting that rapport with the horse, kept me safe, kept me from breaking a leg or, getting thrown from the saddle and getting a head injury or something like that. Because then when it's time to get on, I've already gone through these steps that I learned at Warrior Ranch. And I know that me and that horse, we at least have an understanding. Like, we were like, okay, we're in a herd right now. We're a pair. We need to work together. And then we can collaborate instead of me fighting that animal that's much larger than me.
I also just want to point out that Paul was one of our equine coaches as well. Not only did it help us physically t- put the property together, he did help us in our what we refer to as retreats and helped coach other veterans along the way.
So, Aline, did you think that when you first started out and you did your first rescue horse, did you think it was going to blossom into this?
Not not to where it is today. To be perfectly honest, I thought I'd have to win the lottery to do this something like this. And to be clear, I did not win the lottery. I had to make sure that that's clear because I was like, we've it's been a lot of hard work. It's a labor of love, but we've had a great community. Like I said, it started in our backyard, and the initial thought was to get a ranch and have a bunch of cabins and or a big house or whatever, and take in some homeless veterans and get them back on their feet. And as I was processing that idea with other military, I was speaking to one of my Marine friends, James Carr, Master Gunny Sergeant, and he said to me, try to focus on those with PTS first. Get them before they end up homeless. That's he suggested that, and I was like, So I started doing the research and development on that, and so that's why we went in that direction of going. If you have PTS, and I also want to be clear, you don't have to have PTS to come into the ranch. You just have to be a military veteran, active military, a veteran, or first responder. You do not have to have PTS. It's we just want you to be there because the biggest testimony we get is camaraderie. But no, did I ever think it was going to be this big? Well, I should say, yeah, I dreamt that it would be this big. But now that it's here, I have to every once in a while. It's been a lot of. We've been running for 5 years. Actually, next year's our 10th anniversary. Can you believe that, Paul? It's our 10th anniversary next year.
No,
Yeah,
it's
it's
four
like,
lines.
yeah. And you were there probably 9 of the years, and so it's pretty wild that we are where we are. And I do have to take a look, like, take a seat once in a while and just look at what's happened because it's grown. I give it all. I'm a faithful person, and I say this is God because there are so many times it's been quite a journey, and it's been a great community that has come together. Because every time I think we might, like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Boom, a little God wink comes, and we get a big sign, or somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I got a landscape company. Do you need some help?" I'm like, "Yes, I need the 6 acres mowed." It's so it's been amazing, the community that's there. I have to say, though, like just the people in the neighborhood, the people in all the neighborhoods around it, the local companies have been incredible. We are really blessed, and the fact that it's growing at the rate that it's growing is it's very fulfilling. It's been a very fulfilling experience. We have served over 450 participants already.
It's impressive.
Hmm.
That's impressive. This really is. It's. Well, I was curious when you were actually serving the first responders, the veterans, active duty. What do they usually come in? Like, how do they come there to the retreats, and then how do they leave, like mentally?
So that's a great question, and we was just talking with somebody about this today. What happens often, especially if they don't know who we are, they will somebody will come in and they might be like this: "What are you going to do for me? Who are you, and what are you going to do for me? Who do you think you are? Like, you're a civilian, So, and I will admit it was very intimidating at first. I was like, oh, what the heck did I get myself into? I was like, and I would just say, hey, we're out here to have fun at the ranch. We're just here to play with horses. That's all we're going to do. And that's the approach that we take, is that you're just out here to play with horses. You don't have to tell me any of you don't have to speak if you don't want to. You want to speak? Well, listen, I'm not going to give you any kind of advice because I'm a cowgirl. I'm not a mental health therapist. We have a mental health therapist on staff that's there in case there's a situation that we don't know how to handle. But the horse is the therapist. So people might come in very guarded at first, and they're looking around just to check things out. We start out, we all stand, do the Pledge of Allegiance. We have bagels and coffee. We talk about what we're going to do for the day. And then they're outside as fast as we can, hands on horses. We give a safety demo. They get their hands on the horses. and they break out into groups and they work with the horses. And then by lunchtime, everybody's a lot more relaxed. They have something to talk about with the horses. And then we go back out again after lunch. And then at the end of the day, people are hugging, exchanging phone numbers. Hey, when's the next time we're going to be here? So it's been amazing to watch because it happens just about every single time.
Yeah.
Paul, as a veteran and then also being a coach, what are some of the significant things that you've seen? And what do you believe about you being a veteran has also helped create and complement what Aline has been doing?
Well, I think the pridefulness and the ego that we were talking about earlier, I think that helps because I agree with Eileen. Most guys and gals, they show up and it's kind of like the arms crossed. I'm a little closed off. I'm skeptical about what this may be because it's, I don't like admitting that I need help, and I don't like admitting that I've got shortcomings or injuries or whatever it may be that's troubling me, especially to strangers. But you're seeing that, like, you kind of do an intro around the room and you realize, okay, these are all other service members. And you know how it is. You get to your unit or you're in the military, like, you don't want to look bad in front of these guys. You certainly don't want to be the guy that's not pulling their weight. And there's always something to do around the ranch that needs work. So, if you these just aren't the kind of people who see somebody doing work and then they're not going to do it, or who see somebody stepping up to a challenge or getting out of their comfort zone. And then it starts to feed off each other. So I think that's where the veteran thing and the first responders are largely the same. Like, they want to be more, they want to do more. And so once you get the ball rolling, that machine just starts kind of feeding itself and perpetuating itself. And then the energy picks up. So that's the biggest thing I've seen. What's wild to me is the amount of community buy-in. I think I've never seen anything like that in any other state or any other program that I've worked with. Just, I mean, from the unions to the racetracks to the rescues to church groups to the boys to the scouts. I mean,
Right. Yep.
it's amazing how many people are like, no, we want this to be in our neighborhood, in our county. We want this to be something we're proud of and that looks good aesthetically and that makes us look good because of the work it's doing. So the community buy-in was huge. And I also think that's one of the big benefits of the Warrior Ranch program is that it's not like a veterans retreat where you go somewhere remote and then you're removed from your immediate community geographically. You're also removed from the community that the people who are there proctoring this event are part of, and then you leave, and that can create sort of a void because it's like you just had this experience. You're up here on the mountaintop, and now you're back down in the valley, and that's not always good. With Warrior Ranch, you're right. You're at home.
Mm-hmm.
You're not that far, whether it's by train or car, from where your life is. And Long Island's a small place. It's got a lot of people, but everybody's connected because it's an island. So the people you meet at Warrior Ranch are the people that you're going to see in your normal life, and you're going to be able to make a connection with them. And I've seen that a lot. I mean, I'm friends with guys that are cops that were retired before I ever joined the military. Those are some of my best friends. Or Robbie Siegelman, who's a horse trainer. I think Robbie's in his late 60s. There's people that you may not have met and you wouldn't have formed these relationships with, but then you've done this thing together. And I can call on these guys, and you see these other little groups forming and it's like, oh, these people have this interest outside of Warrior Ranch, and so now they're friends. So the idea that you have this veteran who's been displaced because he's left his military career and he's moved away from wherever he served, and he's not back at wherever his home that he started in, which for me was Colorado. And now it's this seamless integration into a real community. It's people you can count on. And you can't because they're first responders, because they're veterans, because they're horse people. Like, those are reliable people. I think horses are a good model for veterans because it's a life and death thing. The horses are hell bent on harming themselves for whatever reason. They're a very fragile animal, as strong as they are. And if you don't have somebody that you can call on in the middle of the night, or that can go and check on your herd or your animal, you can't do horses. Nobody's shoeing their own horses and doing their own vet work and doing all the feedings and skipping every single vacation and event because they have to take care of this animal every day. You've got a network if you've got horses. And that network's reliable because it's life and death. Because a horse can colic and then it needs immediate help. And if you don't get it to it within a short amount of time, then you have a disaster, or you have a horse that's passed. So meeting those kind of people, it's like, okay, these are people I can relate to on a fundamental level. These are people that I can trust to support me when it really counts, because that's what they do. It's just baked in to their interests and their profession. And I think that's, for me, that was the biggest thing that I saw. That was the biggest takeaway for me, aside from just the enjoyment of, getting to do this with horses in the middle of Long Island.
No,
So,
listen, Will, I'm busting here because he touched on a couple of things. If you don't mind my sharing a couple of stories. So the first thing when he's talking about, like, if horses are trying to hurt themselves or whatever, it's they when they get sick. We had a recent about it was probably the end of last summer or whatever. One of our horses got really sick. He had like 105.6 fever, and this was Ranger, and that was like when I first got the call, they said, "Oh, I think he's got a fever." And I said, "Well, what's the fever?" And they're like, "Well, it's 105.6." I was like, "What?" I mean, like, I jumped up. I'm like, "That's an emergency." It was like,
Yeah.
emergency, get the vet. Now, whatever reason we couldn't get the vet there, I'm like, cool this horse down. He's got to get cooled down, but do it slowly. And because I wasn't available to get there, but there were some guys there. And for the next like 3, 4 days, because this horse ran that fever for like 4 days, it was crazy. And, but they were there pretty much around the clock, taking his temperature every hour to make sure it went down. They cooled him down. They got him down to about 100, 101 or whatever. It went back up 8 hours later. They were there cooling him down. But that just goes to show you they are there, right there, helping that horse. They were there in an emergency. It was a teamwork. It was amazing. Like that was like my first experience seeing. I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We have, this horse needs a lot of help. Of course I'm getting ready to go out there, but I just could not believe, actually I shouldn't say I couldn't believe it. Of course I had this amazing team of people that just jumped right in, and it was just very, very cool. Paul also talked about the ages of people, the generations. It goes from 20s to 80s. We even had somebody in their 90s. So, and it's funny because they all communicate. You're bridging the gap. You're bridging the generational gap, and it's pretty cool to watch. Like John Berger just loves coming to see like where Joe is, what his life is turning out to. He's like that young man. He's like, he gets a kick out of watching the young Marine. We had another story that I want to share because when Paul was talking about when people are introducing themselves, we had a Marine that came in who was definitely he was definitely having some trouble. He was definitely having some issues, and he came in. His wife brought him to the ranch. Someone called me up and said, "Can you bring him in?" I said, "Of course." And I knew he was a Marine, so I made sure I had another Marine there. John Berger is a Vietnam veteran. This was he was a man. He was in the Afghan War, and so he came in and was, looking all around the room, was looking at all of us. We're all trying to make a connection, but introduced myself. He's like, yep. Everybody else introduced themselves. And as soon as John said, I'm a Marine, boom, he just latched onto him. I'm sure you know that feeling. Well, he just latched, and then all of a sudden everything calmed. And then we were able to move on. We had a great day. And it was that was another neat little thing for me to see. But that's another reason why we are strictly veterans and first responders. We want Warrior Ranch to be a safe place to go. What happens at the ranch stays at the ranch. I always say we're like Vegas. What happens there stays there. And people, we want you to feel safe. You have your fellow Marines, fellow Armies, Rangers, Navy, whatever service you were in, whatever branch you were in, and whatever, if you're police or firefighters too, we have all that there. So that's the biggest thing that we have is the camaraderie at Warrior Ranch.
so while I was listening to both of you guys speak, the thing that came to my mind was, do you guys ever follow up with the family after a person goes through the ranch? And has you ever heard of any stories about the significance of the change and it has altered?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's pretty common feedback we get from family members, spouses or kids. They're like, they'll say, I've never seen my veteran this happy, or I've never seen them open up like this. Or, some guys, you're so used to being tough all the time and life's hard anyway. And then you got to go get out and work your ass off. And so you got this shell. And then to see somebody that's like just this tough guy, and he's been a tough guy his whole life, and he's a tough dad, tough Army man, and then he's petting a horse and he's opening up, and you can see that boy that's still in there. So that's very common feedback. that they're like, oh, this is a side of this person I forgot, or a side of this person I
Mhm.
haven't seen, or a side that we thought was buried underneath all this trauma and bad experience, and that toughness, that armor that you build up that serves you to get through these hard events.
Yeah, we've also had some family members say, "It's time for you to go see your horse. Go out, go to the ranch, go see your
That's
horse."
another one now.
Yeah. So, but we've also had people. I've done some videos and things like that where, so as you know, I've done the documentary, but veterans open up and they say some very, things. Some people have tried to take their lives, and this video, I'll never forget it. We were at our annual benefit, and I was playing the video, and one of the veterans I interviewed had talked about that, and I had put it in the video. But when he came, I had no idea he was bringing his daughter, and I was like, you remember what you said in the video, right? And all of a sudden he was like, yes. And I was just, because I don't know what conversation he had with his daughter ever about it. And what that did was it opened up, because he told me later, he goes, it opened up a door for us to communicate. Because what's happening when the families are there, they now have something else in common, because we do if there's a family in crisis, we bring the family in as well, and we'll do that separately. That's a separate day. And then they have this commonality of the horse, so there's something else to talk about besides, oh my god, do you see what he did today, do you see what kind of mood he's in today, or this and that, or, oh, what are we going to do, and walk. They have something to talk about besides the issue, which, I mean, what I'm saying. It's like they have something to talk about, and it's happy. It's a happy experience. And one of the first families that we ever dealt with, she's a Marine, and she always had, this was the face, the stone cold face, and she didn't realize it, but as a Marine, trained to have that, you got to be serious all the time. Now the kids always thought mom was upset or mom was mad. Right, so when they came to the ranch, that came out, and she had no idea. So to this day, she says now now the kids understood the parent mom better, the mom understood the kids better, and there's a lot more smiles. Like, she makes sure that she smiles, and they have since moved away. They're down south, and they've actually even come back up for a day just to come to the ranch because they enjoyed it so much. But they've been coming for years, and then relocated, but they still talk about the ranch and come back to the ranch. But yeah, we work with families, and we do get some good feedback.
So there's a couple of things that was going through my mind is obviously I'm happy to hear that about how it impacts it, and the reason I started up this podcast about normalizing men's mental health is because it's not just us that's impacted; it's everybody else that loves us, everybody else that we are around, and how we become very radioactive. And when you shared the story about the person saying, "Hey, I wanted to end my life. I
Mm.
wanted to be over," we don't realize that the volume, when we allow a person to see us more of a vulnerable spot,
Mm.
how this is on the table, this is what we think is a weakness, but it's really a strength to allow somebody to love us, allow us to be able to call on. And even in my job, what I do now, if I'm talking to a person that's kind of in semi-crisis, I call 988 with them, and I press one for the veterans crisis line, and I walk them through it as a dry run,
Hmm.
because a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough permission to be able to have that conversation, that soft, to be able to be seen. Like, Aline, I could tell that you are a very tough person, but you have like this super gentleness inside you, and
That's the
like you,
Queen's chick in me. That's what it is. It's the New York Queen's chick in me.
yeah, like it's kind of like you have to be tough and stoic, but at the same time you could tell the kindness. It's very similar
Thank
to a
you.
lot of people that actually dealt with a lot of hardship and not knowing how to communicate, because growing up in Long Island, and I grew up in Mastic, but more of
Hmm.
a lower social economics.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
it was more of a transactional relationship. What do they want from me? What do they need from me? And how are they going to take my words and cut me with them? So why would
Yeah.
I actually allow somebody to bring it in? And most people don't realize when veterans, especially Army and Marine Corps, they come from lower social economics, and a lot of times their fathers actually are not really in the picture for the
Mm.
most part. So I'm really grateful that you actually or talking about the suicide. And you touched on the documentary. I bought a copy. I have not been able to watch it. I don't own a DVD player. It's almost like a VHS player to me now. Like I just had to find one. But tell me more about why did you do the documentary?
Well, my background is television and film production. So I wanted to be able to use my skill set in order to further this project and get the word out. In my opinion, Will, the fact that we have all these veterans dying by suicide every day is an absolute disgrace in this country. It shouldn't be happening. It should not be happening. And then we're seeing the rise as well in police officers as well. It's just shame on us. We should not be doing that. We should be helping you. You guys should have all the resources you need to feel good when you get back and get back on your feet. I do not think that that information is in the public's eye enough. It needs to be in the forefront of the American people, and it's not. So, one of my visions when putting this together, because of my background in television and film, was hey, let me do documentaries or do some type of television show or something to just. I don't necessarily think I want it to be a series because then it'll become like a novelty, but just to have these impactful documentaries maybe twice a year, just to be like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, wake up, America, and that's to wake up the America because I think we take our freedom for granted. There's no doubt about it. People forget freedom isn't free. And this is to say, hey, wake up. But it's also to tell you, Paul, Will, all your friends, we are here for you. There are people who care about you because I think a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, you don't know that most people they're like, why are you doing this? And they're like, and at the end of a session, someone will go, what do I owe you? I'm like, you don't owe me anything. This is free. This is free to you. And that's another thing I want people to know. It's free. We survive on donations. But that's why I did this documentary. Danielle Altabrando is my partner in Warrior Films, and she's an amazing, amazing storyteller. This could not have been done as well as it is without her. So the two of us, we both work. That's the other thing. We both all have everybody who works there has. I have a couple of part-time people who work at the ranch, but I have another job. So does Danielle, and so we were
I'm also
working on this. What was that?
I'm also employed.
Yeah. Yes. It's plausible. Yeah. Like we all have other jobs. This is labor of love that we do this, and we were working on. So all along, Paul was probably one of the first. Because of my background, I said, "Hey, can I do an interview with you?" Now I think I've interviewed Paul like 3 times because I kept like things where it was over the years, and I said, "Oh, let me talk about this. Let's talk about that," and so Paul and some of the very first people who they were in my backyard when this started in our backyard. Jim and I started it, and it was right here in our yard, and folks would come to our house and we'd work with the horses. We had Warrior, Cody, and Midnight is who we worked with. And they let us interview them. And because of that, I was able to make these little sizzle reels to get the word out, which ultimately ended up getting us the property. And then, but I had all these interviews and I was like, I have to put something together. And then Warrior, the horse that we got, he too went through a lot of trauma before we got him. So our veterans tell their story and we interweave the story of Warrior as well. And that was the inspiration for the ranch. So that's what the film's about. So it's very serious. It is heavy, but you get through the first 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it'll lighten up a little bit. But it is serious because this is a serious topic we're discussing. But the reason it was done was to get the word out to the American people. And right now, as you know, it's going to be playing in Missoula in on Saturday, the 13th. It's going to be at the Residence Inn on the main floor at 4 p.m. And so if people are in Missoula, it's at the Equine International Film Festival. So I would love it for the people in Montana to go over to Missoula and see it. It's at the Residence Inn and see it there. Right now, we do have some DVDs. I know that's a little bit old technology, but that's all right. People requested it. We actually sold about 50 of them. So we were pretty amazed by that. We will have it streamed sooner or later. The challenge is it when you put it on a streaming channel. I want to we want to maintain ownership. Warrior Ranch needs to. We still want to use it to help get us funds as well. To help be a fundraiser as well. So we will eventually stream it, and I will get that word out when the time comes.
So before we go and conclude everything too quickly, I actually wanted to hold you guys on just a little bit longer about the communication because you talked about this is a serious thing, and you're 100% correct. First responders and like as police and EMTs, a lot of times they're overlooked because this is every day we take it for granted. The service that they're doing, people will say, well, they shouldn't be in there if they can't handle it. The hardships that they go through day in and day out, the calls that they get, they don't know what calls they're going to be granted that day. The fact is that having the ability to talk to a partner or to communicate to somebody, it's almost impossible because how do you want to scar somebody else when you feel like you scarred them? Paul, I know you were overseas, correct?
Yep.
Think about when the first time that you even thought about trying to articulate what you did, what you seen, what you felt, what you heard, what emotions was going on. How paralyzing was that?
You know, very. I don't know how you talk to, like, for me and my mom, that there was a block. There are things that we just didn't talk about, even though I spent almost 3 years in Afghanistan, which was a terrible time for me. It was an extremely traumatic time for her because her sons are in harm's way. My brother's a Marine as well, so he was in harm's way. And so there's certain things that are just so terrible, like the thought of losing my mother, or vice versa. Her losing a son or a daughter. It's the worst thing, right? So how do you talk about it? And we sat down and we watched a documentary together, and we actually had, for the first time, and I haven't been in combat in almost 13 years. We actually had a conversation about what it was like and some of the things that I went through, and what that meant to her and what that was like for her. And so, like, we didn't, that was a conversation that I was waiting since I first started deploying in 2007 to have. And then we watched this documentary together, and it's sort of like, oh, well, this is something that we can talk about. This is something that other people are going through. This is normal. It's not the worst thing in the world. And we're on the other side of it now. So, I think without a vehicle and without people to support you and kind of help to frame your trauma and your extreme experiences into something that approaches normality, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can open up about it. And it's very frustrating. The times I have tried to talk to, like, women I was dating about what I was going through, it's tough. It's like a total whiff trying to explain what it's like and how that has an effect on you. And I haven't had a lot of positive outcomes prior to getting more education and more counseling and being involved in more programs and kind of sorting through that with others that know what they're doing, either because they're a professional or because they've done it for so long. So, yeah, I think it's nearly impossible to be able to relate. But I was really, that was one of the things. I knew the documentary was good. I'd watch it alone, and then watching with my mom and seeing her reaction, I thought this will be something she doesn't enjoy. And it was emotional for both of us, but it ended up being a very positive thing. And I think that I'm tight with mom. Me and mom are got a good relationship, but I feel like that was a bridge we needed to cross together to, have a better relationship. And it happened.
Well,
So
thank you for sharing that, Paul.
thanks for making that film. So fun to talk to my mom. It was good. It was a conversation that we needed to have for a long time. And, I'm an author, so I've written some articles, I've written some books. But like, how do you read a book about your child getting shot at and blown up? Like, nobody wants to read that about their kids. So that wasn't an effective way to communicate that either. So it was really surprising, And the horses have been, my brother has horses, and that's another way that me and my mom bond. Our whole family, we go out, and we just chill out with horses sometimes. And it's like everybody gets on the same baseline, and then we move forward. I think it's a good method.
I feel like a lot of the times the dilemma is that we don't know how to articulate how we felt,
Yeah.
and are we actually dishonoring the thoughts by giving it words and not being able to express the emotions correctly?
Hmm.
Like my dad was a Vietnam vet, my grandfather was a World War II vet, my great grandfather was a World War I vet. Well, they did the best that they could do. And one of the things that they did was try to protect their families from themselves.
Yep.
Well, what happens is, as a young boy, we actually start to emulate our parents. And this is what they're doing at this time. So having a conversation saying, yeah, I was scared shitless about this.
Mhm.
Or I watched one of my friends bleed out in front of me. It's hard. It's really rough. And that could have been me. I was there 5 minutes after. Well, I was by there 5 minutes there before. That could have been me.
Yeah.
And then you're like, am I going to traumatize them? And what am I actually getting from this? What's the secondary gain from it?
Mhm.
And when you started talking about this before we jumped on and started recording, Aline, about how people are connecting and how are they communicating, and like they are prey animals, and
Mhm.
a lot of us are in this hyper state of arousal
Mhm.
where we are actually paying attention and becoming hyper vigilant. Can you share more about the experiences, what horses deal with physiology, and how we as humans?
Sure. So, by nature, horses are prey animals and humans are predators. That is just nature. So, the horse's senses are very heightened because their life depends on it. They have to be they have to be heightened. Their eyesight's incredible, their hearing's incredible, their sense of touch. They can feel a fly land on them. You'll see them like shiver off a fly, shake off a fly. They are very sensitive and they are in tune to everything around them. They can almost see 360 degrees around them. They can't see directly in front of them or directly behind them, but their eyes are on the sides of their heads and they can see all around them. They are hyper vigilant, and that the veterans and first responders can relate to that because when they're in those situations, they have to be hyper vigilant. They have to be aware of everything around them because their life depends on it. So that's the parallel between the horses and the veterans, and that's the connection that they make. When someone goes into the arena with the horse, there is biological. They've done tests on this. They've put heart rate monitors on humans and heart rate monitors on horses. If you are anxious, which is fine, you're allowed to be anxious. The horse can tell what you're feeling because they can feel our heartbeat from 5 feet away. We have a magnetic field around us that's about 5 feet. The horse's is about 25, 35 feet. They have a much bigger magnetic field around them. So if I go into the arena and I'm anxious and my heart rate's up, now a horse's heart rate is naturally lower than ours. So, but if my heart rate's up and I go into that arena and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous, I'm so nervous. I've never been around 1,000 pound animal before, but I'm trying to be cool. But my heart rate's up. That horse is going to raise its heart rate up to match mine, and then it will lower its heart rate. And whether I realize it or not, that's what's happening with me. So it does truly calm the person. If you see horses in the field, like you see a herd of horses ever on the National Geographic Channel or not, there's 100 horses in the field. In every herd, there's only one leader, one number one, one number two, one number three, all the way down the line. There's one sentinel that is made in that herd. All the horses' heads are down grazing. Then all of a sudden, you'll see the horses all jump up and bolt. They are the fastest reactionary animal alive. What is happening is that sentinel, all their heart rates are at the same rate. They raise and lower at the same time. All the horses sync up. So that sentinel all of a sudden starts seeing a lion wake up and getting ready like to go out on the prowl. Like they're all grazing, everything's fine, but now he suddenly sees a predator. His heart rate spikes and they just bolt. They all are in sync and bolt together. That's just to show you how they sync. And they will sync with us as well when we're in that arena. When you're grooming and you try and breathe and calm the horse down. You calm yourself down by breathing as well. We will say that often to the participants. Breathe. Don't forget to breathe because we all forget to breathe. You know, and the bottom line is whatever emotions we are giving off, that horse is going to respond accordingly. Well, you can say, hey, Eileen, how you doing? Well, I'm doing fantastic today. And I could be lying through my teeth and you may have no idea. But that horse would know. That horse would know if I was having a bad day or not. And that's the one thing we hear our veterans say all the time. They're like, I do an emotional dump on the horse. So someone said that to me yesterday. I said, well, what do you mean? Are you actually speaking to the horse? He goes, oh, no. He goes, no, though the horse knows. He goes, I just go over there and I just, he sits with the horse, but the horse will know and come over to him and comfort him. And it is. It's just absolutely amazing. They can feel us. There is a science behind it. It's been proven. Again, Paul mentioned earlier, we didn't know why horses, like a while back, he didn't know why horses were helping. I had no idea of all the science as I first started this. I learned a lot of it. It's been a journey, and I learned a lot of it along the way. And I knew it worked. I didn't know why. I was figuring it out along the way. And yeah, there is scientific proof that it works.
Well, and it's such a parallel to how veterans are too. I mean, if I go into a restaurant with some person I've never met before, I'm going to sit with my back to the door. But if I meet you at the door and you're the new person I'm supposed to be sitting down with, you say, "Hey, I was a Marine. I was in combat. I was in 0311 or whatever you may be," and I'm like, "Oh, cool." And then we're just going to sit wherever because I know you're going to be watching my back, and that's what happens with the veterans too. Like you're hyper vigilant because you're navigating this life all by yourself, and you're missing that unit that always watched your back, and you had somebody awake on CQ or staff duty that you could call if you got into trouble. And if you were out in the field somewhere, like you could just watch your buddies and whatever they were doing. If you did that, you were doing the right thing for the most part. And the horses are the same, and so it clicks really fast for these veterans and first responders when they come out because they're like, oh, I once I learn the cues that the horse gives me if he's alert or he's upset or he's anxious, I can pick up on that. And then it's like, well, this guy's watching. He's got better hearing and better eyesight than I do, and he can see a greater field of view. So I can take my security, my threat level down. My threat assessment can go down a few notches, and I can trust that. Well, I got an early warning system from this animal. He's going to let me know if something is going on, and then that feeling grows. That effect grows. Like once you get used to it and you've spent enough time there, you realize, oh, the people that are helping the animals, they're calm and they're happy. So that's good. All the animals are doing what animals are supposed to do. They're chewing on hay and, blinking their eyes and, snorting and being lazy. All right. Well, then why would I be agitated? Why would I be excited? Because I've got this thing that's got better senses than I do. And he's calm and he's afraid of everything. So it's a natural parallel, and it's not a replacement for being with your unit, but it's a lot healthier, I think, than trying to seek out that what you had. It's a good replacement in that sense.
It's we forget about it where we were surviving, we were protecting our buddies, and we were trying to keep them safe.
Yep.
The like even clearing a house, you could yell out the small room. You're actually trusting your buddies. You're going left, right, left, right. You're you're trusting on them to make sure that they had your six. And then, depending on where you are in time, you might know that this is a safe place, but you have all these types of arousal sensations that creates this narrative that is not safe. And a lot of people don't realize this. When they say they get bit by a horse, when they're getting like that little peck,
Mhm.
that ain't shit. A horse can be able to pick you up by your collarbone and throw you like it's
Yep.
you're nothing. And if I remember correctly, based off their physiology, the horse has enough pressure in their jaw to crush another horse's skull, if I
Mhm.
Mhm.
remember correctly.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
very,
that's accurate.
it's
I have
very,
firsthand knowledge that that's accurate, unfortunately.
and it's very fascinating to me, like because we're looking at these beings, and the reason I wanted to talk, because I don't know Danielle that well, the one that introduced me to you guys. I know her through my buddy Bobby and Madeline,
Mhm.
and when I heard about this project, I thought about how many veterans I'd known that had been through similar projects as this. And a buddy with me, my first tour in Iraq, PJ, he went through a Wounded Warrior program, and they did with horses when he was actually getting out. Me, when I worked over at my ex's farm, the horse name was Buttons. It was an old horse. I almost want to think it was about, and it sounds crazy, but I think he was about 40 years old. He was just this old cushions horse, like just natty and dirty and just like, but got arms around him. And at this time, I was about like 300 pounds. And that horse made me feel small. And the love and compassion that they're able to give and be able to look at us, not as a warrior, not as a hero, not as a perpetrator, but just a being. And I believe that it helps us with the exposure to being around these animals. And I believe what you guys are doing and the narrative of what you're sharing is going to be able to help out a lot of people. And Aline, where can we find you if we want to do donations?
Sure.
And go ahead.
Yeah, warriorranchfoundation.org. That's the website. You can go right there, warriorranchfoundation.org. And for those of you in Montana, come see us Saturday on the 13th in Missoula at the Residence Inn, 4 p.m. Warrior, A Battle Against Trauma, Learning to Love and Trust Again is playing at the film festival, the Equus International Film Festival. We'd love for folks in your area to go. I know you're far away, Will, but I would love it if you can get there. And I also want to let you know if you ever are back on Long Island, not sure you'd ever come back this way, being out in the beautiful country that you are. But if you happen to be, please come to Calverton to the ranch.
So I just want to let you know Montana's full, but I want to give you a perspective. You have more people in Suffolk County than we do in the whole state of Montana.
I believe that.
And
The traffic tells me so.
but no, in all seriousness, though, I really do appreciate what you're doing. Paul, thank you for giving the experience. Aline, thank you for spearheading this and giving your heart. I know you're working full time. Thank you for your husband being able to be a supporter of this dream of yours. And thank you guys for exactly what you're doing and spreading good love out into the world.
All right. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Will.
Welcome.
Thanks, Will.
Oh.
Appreciate it.